So we had a cancellation. We had a wonderful speaker prepared for today, but apparently due to some illness, there were two speakers. One of them became ill and was unable to come. This was like last night. So I'm presiding today, so I'm going to keep talking. So anyway, so what was I thinking of for today? It was something that I had been thinking about before, about annoying people. And why can there be some really annoying people? We have an expression in ethical culture, the old timers know it very well. We act so as to elicit the best from others and thereby draw out the best from ourselves. So the topic of today is how to elicit the best from the worst. I mean, is everybody like beset by annoying people? Are there so many annoying people out there tormenting the population? Is there a thing? Well, we should be talking about celebrating our connections, our interdependence, our collective strength when we work together, arm in arm. I mean, this is the Ethical Culture Society. We're the ones who attribute worth to everyone, no matter who they are or what they've done. But we have to acknowledge the fact that some people are just very challenging to abide. Now, I don't take a shine to everybody that I meet, so I'm not really immune. And most people are liable to anxious and defensive feelings sometimes and apt to share their irritation by passing it on to other people. This reminds me of the person I once knew who said, "I love humanity. It's the people I can't stand." Well, I guess the point is that we want to get along with everyone, march shoulder to shoulder, pull the load in unison, and life is calmer, more satisfying when that happens. But some people just seem to act as impediments or naysayers or gaslighters or know-it-alls, or they just march to a different drummer unaccountably. Well, some people you could just ignore. My good friend Freddie, when he heard that I was going to speak on this topic, offered that the title shouldn't be how to deal with annoying people, but why to deal with annoying people. Right? He says avoidance is the best strategy. Just cut them off. But, you know, we're often bound to these people. We often need to endure relations with insufferable coworkers, bosses, family members, people whose lives are entwined with our own. It isn't always realistic. Anyway, as for Freddie, my wife finds him extremely annoying and never wants to socialize with him. She's cut him off completely, which makes things awkward for me. People do cut close family members out from their lives. We all know people who hold grudges for years and ghost their own families or their former BFFs. I have a friend who I consider to be a very nice person. He hasn't spoken to his sister in 2 decades. Now, I know there was a problem, but even I can't seem to remember what it was. He just can't forgive her. Now, I knew her too way back when, and I always thought she was a fundamentally decent person, you know. Well, annoyances and, of course, behavior we would call worse than merely annoying can ruin important relationships. So are they unconscious of their impact on other people? Are they trying to tell us something? So our relationships are like kaleidoscopes. They work perfectly well one way, and then with little turn, they suddenly seem to be something else entirely. Anyone can annoy someone else with hardly any effort at all. We can't always tell who's the annoyer and who is the annoyee. I know 2 perfectly decent, mature, rational, and supportive women who will no longer talk to each other. One said something she didn't really understand the implications of, and the other just can't forgive her. So who's at fault? Anyway, how do we handle people we find insufferable? Well, in ethical culture, we say that we attribute worth to all people. That would have to include the annoyers of the world. It's not that we recognize worth in some people and reward the nice ones with the designation of worthy. It's that as annoying and challenging as a person may be, we still attribute worth to him or her. We confer that grace on someone as a matter of our faith. This may be our only real statement of faith. To be meaningful, it also has to include the nasty people along with the nice. It must apply to both sinners and saints. Otherwise, it's an empty statement. So why do we say that? Because our goal is an inclusive community in which everyone can thrive, even the ones whose transgressions would cause their shunning. The founder of ethical culture, Felix Adler, the author of that rule on attributing worth, was certainly aware that some people could be despicable, and attributing worth to them could tax your ethical capacity. Quoting Marcus Aurelius, Adler mentioned the backbiter, the scandal-monger, the informer. You could add all the personalities that you've encountered who brought you down and stole your joy. Meanwhile, you can't disengage if your paycheck is tied to them or your in-laws, but can you instead attribute worth? A wise person once told me that you cannot presume to change other people. All you can do is work on yourself. So your project of learning how to cope with annoying people could begin with yourself, with your own foundational durability, your resilience. Is it worth it to look to your own behavior when dealing with the sins of another? I say that whatever contributes to a smoother workplace, a family, or a community is worth investing in. It's not necessarily for you to mete out justice for every outrage. So, how to deal with it? First, I would say is to look to your own reactions of outrage or insults, meaning that the first enemy of our peace of mind is our own reactivity. Probably the most important lesson dealing with outrage is to cultivate equanimity. Reacting to annoyance by shouting or cursing will only aggravate yourself and will only contribute more to the annoyer's program. If necessary, you can take the time to calm yourself with use of a breathing technique. Many people find it useful to take 3 breaths. And that also gives you the time to realize that the immediate reply you intended to throw back at him wasn't really wise after all. The breaths give you time to devise a measured response. Do you remember Groucho's cigar? That was a prop on stage to give himself a little extra time to think of a retort. So come up with your own version of Groucho's cigar. The second rule is don't assume it's about you. It looks like they're attacking you, but more likely they are simply the sounding board, and it has little to do with you. If you immediately jump to the ramparts to defend yourself from the attack, the dogs of war are unleashed. So it's better to maintain that equanimity and use your curiosity to find out what's at the bottom of this. Another handy rule is don't assume the worst. Many statements are capable of multiple meanings. So it's possible that the annoying person did not intend to convey that vicious message that you heard. Don't attribute the worst meaning to it first. Give the person an opportunity to fully express their meaning so the more anodyne meaning has an opportunity to emerge and establish itself. It might be useful to help the person fine-tune their statements so that they mean something less aggressive and more accurately reflects their frustrations. Like, you didn't mean that we're all to go to hell now, did you? Now, I know a friend who's from India. He moved here as an adult, but he's an American citizen for many years. And although his English is really fine, he'll sometimes miss subtleties that a native would catch. So we've often played golf together. And when another of our regular group cracks a joke, it's usually peppered with that fellow's sarcastic and somewhat snide attitude. Well, it's Freddie again. He calls it Bronx humor, you know, the Bronx cheer kind of thing. Well, Satish rarely sees the humor, and from time to time he felt terribly insulted, thinking that he was the butt of some hostile jab. So I help Satish understand when it's a joke. You know, just a little subtle expression. So now he knows to look to me first for cues before he reacts. And I can assure him it was just a joke. And then he'll know to give like a perfunctory chuckle because he didn't get the joke, obviously, and leave it at that. See, problem solved and misunderstanding averted. It was a matter of interpretation that Satish could rely on to deflect his own reactivity. The author of Nonviolent Communication, Marshall Rosenberg, and many of you have, David actually has given us talks on nonviolent communication. So Marshall Rosenberg offers the explanation that every hostile or antisocial statement that's made by someone will express an underlying need or feeling. People speak out of their needs. If you react to the hostility, the surface message only, react only to the surface message, either defensively or by returning the hostility, you will inadvertently compound the hostility. Rather, his technique is to try to identify the needs as and the hurt out of which the hostile statement emerged, as well as the needs and hurts from which your own reaction comes out. One would respond to a harsh statement with something like, I'm seeing that you're concerned about the, say, scheduling of the event. Can we talk about that for a few minutes? Or I'm sensing you're anxious about the reunion. The idea is that by identifying the need or the source of their hurt, as well as perhaps your own, the ensuing conversation will be supported by the recognition of underlying feelings. And this will reroute everyone towards calmer communication. Be more constructive. So even if you're wrong about identifying the source of the other person's feelings, the conversation winds back around to the perpetrator's own problems, further away from his initial target, which was you. There are many facets to this practice of attributing worth to everyone. For example, by doing that, you are impelled to respect the person for voicing a real issue, even if it's expressed in an unfortunate way. And you encourage yourself to look into that annoying person's feelings, their motivations, and their hurts. It encourages you to go beneath the surface, and by assuming that there's more to it than meets the eye, you can explore the source of the problem, all for the goal of resolving the friction. By attributing worth, you would be less apt to write someone off, less apt to run away from someone, and less apt to being pushed aside. I once knew a woman who couldn't let others make a meaningful contribution to a program because it was hers. Now, she seemed to feel responsible for everything, and she had an overwrought sense of ownership. But others needed to participate too. So how to break in and go past the friction without triggering a civil war. It was by recognizing her need for praise and recognition. The answer was to praise her past contributions, reward her with recognition for all her work, offer to help her going forward. She was made to discover that the world was not strapped to her back alone, that she need not lose her sense of identity when she shared the management of the program. So in ethical culture, we have that expression that comprises our version of the golden rule. It says, as we often recite, and as I mentioned before, act so as to elicit the best in others and thereby elicit the best in yourself. So this recommends that we strive to be positive and do what we can to urge out the good in someone. It's an entreaty to lean in and find what's decent in someone, and by doing that, you bring both of you to a better place. Coupled with the determination to attribute worth to every person, we have faith that there is worth in everyone and a best somewhere in there to be elicited. If it's hidden now, there must be some way to tease it out and help the person realize their better self and smooth out our relations. This project would require some attention and effort. And the question is it worth the effort to discover and elicit the best that some annoyer possesses somewhere? Or is it worth more to endure the hostility let loose by an improvident backtalk and piled on misunderstandings? This doesn't have to be free psychotherapy for all your acquaintances, but it can trigger a curiosity about how a person is put together so you can contextualize the annoying things they say and do. Some annoyances come from the best intentions. Misplaced ideas and harebrained plans often seem brilliant and reasonable at the time. At my old society in White Plains, there was once a new push to engage the membership in an upcoming membership meeting, treating it like a retreat. So, treating it like a retreat, it was to be for members only. Well, there was one very active member whose wife was, by choice, not a member of the society, but she often came to events. The head of the team organizing the meeting told her she couldn't enter the hall because she was not a member. Well, this made her very upset. Her husband was upset. Initially, this whole thing sounded like a good idea, but here, in practice, it came across overly officious and unreasonably strict and pointless. But for that evening, rules were rules. It left a sour taste for everyone, and the husband started to kind of withdraw after that, and eventually he quit. The person who made and enforced the rule was himself very upset and was contrite over the mishap. He didn't intend for it to turn out that way. His focus was on building membership solidarity. What do you do for a misjudgment like this? What do you do when you are the annoyer? Okay, it was Freddie again. But now I know him to be a person with good intentions, even if his actions sometimes come out differently than expected and others are left perplexed or upset. For me, Freddie serves as a bridge, helping me to remember that the annoying other person isn't always the other person. It's sometimes me too, and I also have to remind myself that the point of what we do together isn't only the project's success or the style or manner of someone's work methods. A big part of what we do together is the working together. It's the being together. Coexistence is itself a goal, and it's an art. Just like I hope others will strive to attribute worth to me in my craziest moments, I will try to attribute worth to those annoying and frustrating other people in their craziest moments. Okay, thank you.